Okay, so here's the deal. I thought I knew the characters of my story pretty well. I mean, I am writing a young adult dystopian fantasy, yes, but it's based off the experiences in my life. So I was like, I know this. I got these characters until I realized I didn't. As I've gone through my editing process, I am basically filling out a lot of my story. And what I did for fun is I looked up the process that J.K. Rowling used to plan her characters and I used it for myself and it changed everything. And I'm so excited to tell you all about it today. One, what that process is. Two, why it mattered, not only for this book, but my entire book series. And three, how it has made everything so much easier. I am so pumped about that. But not only that, I promised you in a last video that I would share with you when John and I went away to a castle for our weekend away. And I'm going to apologize right now. I did not actually vlog while there. Did I take footage and videos? Yes. So mixed with my character development here, I'm just going to add some fun footage and video of us in Ohika Castle because talk about magic. So today we're doing a deep dive on character and character planning with a side of magical castle life.
Fantastic.
Hi, if you're new here, my name is Kayla I am writing a young adult dystopian fantasy that's based on my experience of growing up in poverty. And if you're not new here, welcome back. I know if you are not new here, you watched my last video where I did a deep dive into the setting of my book. I went and I actually asked ChatGPT because I have found, I think about this a lot. And before we get started, let's just talk about this. How do we think about using ChatGPT as a resource for writers? I know a lot of people are like really worried about AI in this time of writing. And I'm not asking ChatGPT to write my book. Definitely not. If I was, I'd already be done. But I think that it has been very easy and very quick to do like what I did for my setting, where I pumped into ChatGPT. I said, ChatGPT, tell me what Suzanne Collins did when she was planning her world and her setting. What did she consider for writing the Hunger Games? And that really helped me do a deep dive of like, what is my setting like? Like going over all the points that she did with the atmosphere and different things. I did a whole other video on it, so you can watch. That was really helpful. And I was just like, oh my goodness, that helped me really deepen my idea. And because I was generally writing my setting around the town that I grew up in, but I realized in order to tell my story better, I needed to like move some of the things around. And I took that artistic liberty, and even in continuing to edit, it's made it so helpful. So I wanted to do the same thing for my characters and my character development. And I think I might need two hands for this. Let's give this a little try. So what I did, instead of asking about Suzanne Collins and her characters, one of my favorite stories is Harry Potter. And when I say one of my favorite stories, I'm like my favorite story my entire life. That series has been Harry Potter. The only thing that has ever come to combat that in terms of the world building and how I get obsessed with the character development was the Throne of Glass series is the only other thing that has like got me like full in. And I'm not saying ACOTAR, I'm not saying Crescent City, I'm only saying Throne of Glass. We can make a whole other video on this because I have strong thoughts. But so I said, I went into chat and I asked it, I said, tell me what are all of the things that J.K. Rowling considered when she was writing her heroes. And I didn't only choose J.K. Rowling because of I loved Harry Potter, but also because my hero, my story is a little bit like a Harry Potter story where I come from a family where I don't feel supported. I'm kind of this like reluctant hero moving forward and moving into the world, not having a lot of self-worth. Like that's something that like Harry did not have. And that's something that me as a teen did not have either based on how I grew up. So I asked it, what are the things that they considered? And so when looking at the characters, chat said that some of the things that J.K. Rowling considered was the ancestry, the background, their core traits, their flaws, their arc planning over the whole story, symbols that represent them, and how they fit into society. So I was able to take my main character and and then also like the archetype of their characters and make all of these extra notes, like these 2 pages of notes on her that I hadn't had before. So like, what are the things that symbolize her? What is her background? What is her bloodline? What are the traits that she has? That I had already done, where she's thoughtful, optimistic, independent, scrappy, resilient, risky, defiant, untrusting, and resourceful. Then I started I said, tell me what this looked like for Harry Potter. And so then I had ChatGPT break it down for me and say, what did that look like? And that was even more powerful to read the examples of how she put that into words. And knowing that series so well, I was able to say, oh, I see how this showed up in how he did this or how he did this or why this was part of the story or why this was part of the story. So then I went through and wrote down I think it's called like a log line or something, like the girl grows up impoverished with abusive, uncaring family, discovers magic that she doesn't feel worthy of, right? That's like her wound. Then her flaws, that she doesn't trust anyone nor herself because of the way that she's grown up. So I have to have that flaw in there. And I'm just so excited about this whole process, but writing that down, like that flaw, that helped me so much change the nuance of the story where it's like, oh yes, I need to focus on this. Her flaws that she doesn't trust anyone nor herself. So like she's having a hard time making decisions. When somebody tells her something, does she do it? She doesn't think they're going to be there for her. She doesn't think that people will last, things like that. But she also doesn't believe that she can do the things. And so that comes out in the language, that comes out in her responses to people, that comes out in her outlook, that comes out in her thoughts, that comes out in how she interacts with the world. And as I'm going through this story where I feel like my first draft was largely these big boulders, all of these small things about how she doesn't trust or something like that, or how she's resilient or how she's defiant or how she's overly independent or really scrappy, those things are the sand that gets filled in through the boulders. So I wrote down her motivation is survival. I didn't really have her motivation written down before, but it really helped to bring it. For me, putting things pen and paper really helps bring it to my full brain so that I can then constantly think about it. But her survival, to prove she matters and to create connection because she doesn't have that. Her wants are a happy family, safety, security, and love. Her needs, which she may not know, is to trust others, to trust herself, to learn self-worth, to be proud, learn how to give love, and learn how to receive love. And so it's really powerful to write these things because while she doesn't in the first book really learn how to give and receive love, that comes up in the next 2 books very, very strongly. Then I started looking at all of her relationships. That was another thing that ChatGPT put out for Harry Potter for me, is like, who is he to Ron? Who is he to Hermione? Who is he to Sirius? Who is he to the Dursleys? So then I have these relationships and how my main character Judy, relates to all of these other people. And so that was really helpful too. And as I've been going forth and writing in my book and going through and editing, I'm like, okay, this is the relationship she has with this person. This is the purpose of the relationship. Like, writing this story from my perspective, I haven't sat and reflected on my own life and been like, what was the purpose of this person in my life? What was the purpose of this person in my life? But doing this was so helpful. So then I have like, oh, her mom, the mom character in this book is so powerful because she is a mirror of the possible future for Judy if Judy doesn't get out. Then her sister character is a mirror for Judy. She represents like survival without hope. So it was it's a mirror of what Judy would be like. Her sister Alice is a mirror of what Judy would be like if she didn't have optimism or if she didn't believe, right? If she just kind of like fell into the withering and was just going with it and defiantly was just like whatever, wrecking havoc, right? So every character now also has a specific relationship with Judy, which is just makes the writing and editing so much easier to be like, okay, she's interacting with this person. If this person has this type of relationship with her, this is what they're meant to be and this is what they're meant to do. So I did that with Judy, and then I looked at the symbols. What are the things that symbolize her? So for Judy, the color yellow is going to be a big thing. The emotion is hope and optimism. If you're following along, you already know she hatches a phoenix bird named Arevia, who is also gold. Most phoenix birds are red. And then her freckles are going to also be symbolic of like her childlike wonder, her optimism, her hope, her humbleness. Then the thematic role that she plays is that your worth is actually born in you and you are worthy of love, trust, giving and receiving. You have to actively accept it. She also plays the thematic role of rebellion against the system, and claiming your own power and understanding that like destiny is your own. And I hadn't really laid that out as like, what is her role that I'm telling the reader via the story arc? And maybe those are things that other people were thinking of ahead of time, but because this was inspired by my own life, I didn't really think about it like that. Like I knew the learning lessons, but this just helped me go into it deeper when I was asking all these questions of like, what are her wants? What are her needs? What are her motivations? Things like that. Then I was able to plan out her story arc. And what I realized, this is what helped me realize I need 3 books, not just 2. Well, technically it's going to be 5. So there's going to be book 1 of, before I was originally thinking trilogy. And then it got smushed down because I was just looking at the events of life and the timeline and thinking like, okay, book 1 and 2. But as I've been writing it and as I'm thinking of these themes and these story arcs and as I'm leaning more into the fantasy and the dystopian world and less an actual memoir, this is why I'm starting to say that this is more based off my experience, inspired by my experience, because it's no longer my experience. I'm seeing how it needs to evolve. So in book 1, my story arc of my main character is that she learns who she truly is and risks leaving her current world behind. Book 2 is where she struggles to accept her worth or the help of others, and she gets, as she gets further into her magic and goes into another world where people are more supportive, etc. Like at the end of book 1, it's a transition into this new world, this new magic world. And then book 3, this is where she creates this like large scale change. And that's where this big rebellion to the system comes to fruition. Like you can see that happening now. She leaves the system in order to basically become powerful enough to eventually take it down. And so now that I've been able to dive into this and I see the arc of the books, like everything, I just feel like the scene in The Queen's Gambit where she was like looking up after she took all the drugs and like too many drugs and she's like playing chess on the ceiling. I feel like asking ChatGPT this question was the drug. And I was like, I see it all now. And so I didn't just do Judy for this. I went through and I thought of all the main characters that I have. This took me hours, y'all. I was sitting in a cafe, which again, I've been experimenting around Brooklyn and the city and like finding cafes that I could work in. This one was so cute. The vibe was adorable, but it's way too poppin'. Like too many people were just like loud working in there. They weren't working there. People go there for brunch. And so it was just popping with fun people, which their pancakes looked fantastic. I think it was called 5 Leaves. If I ever crave pancakes, I'm going back there. And it was super cute. But for working like this, it was a little too distracting and loud for me. So then I went in. So the character, one of her, I don't know why I started with this, but I decided to change one of the characters to more of a frenemy for Judy. And I did that during this character deep dive. And I love that switch. It makes that character way more purposeful. And one of the things that I didn't like about it as I was diving into this and as I was thinking about the story arc is I really didn't like that I was bringing in characters that felt like they didn't last a long time. And so when I thought about this character, Beale Smith, is a character that is an uptowner that Judy becomes friends with, and it gives her the first insight of like leaving her neighborhood on the other side of the line and crossing over and seeing how wealthier people live. And so this character, I realize, there's so many mirrors to Judy. Mirror Mom is a mirror to what could be. Alice is a mirror as if she had no hope. Beale is a mirror of like what it would be if she grew up wealthy and privileged with no adversity in her life. Like, what is this sheltered type of person where Judy sees that? And throughout the story, she really realizes that's not something I want either. So then I have her thematic, Beale's thematic role. I have how she feels inside, her symbols that match her. So then anytime Beale comes around, like one of the symbols for her is like cleanliness, because on the other side of the line where Judy lives, it's dirty, dusty, sawdusty, because it's, you know, the whole town is run by the timber company. But on the other side of the line where Beale lives, it's like cleanliness is a big thing about her and always like very put together. And then I have how she comes around all the way through book 3. I'm not going to read all of these to you because one, that will tell you my entire story and give you way too many spoilers. Then you won't even want to read it, or maybe you want to read it more. But two, there's just not enough time. Then I did the same thing for Mom. Like, what are her themes? What are her traits? What are her wants and needs? What are the symbols for her? What is kind of her part in the story for book 1, 2, and 3. And I'm really excited about that because I think it's going to be really powerful to see the struggles of that relationship, because one, that was true in my real life. But I think one of the things in book 3 that I really want, and if you've been on this channel before, you know that I went and saw my mom recently and that it was a really great experience. And I realized in book 3, I want to write that in. I want to honor that as my truth. Like, my mom is getting older. She's not very healthy, but I think in writing this book, and I talked about this at length before, but I feel really good and really in a great place in my heart and my soul. And I want that for Judy, the character, and I want that for her mom too. So that's like become part of that arc. Then of course the sister character is kind of the rival, the adversary. Then Walker is Judy's best friend. Gabe is Walker's older brother. So I did their characters and went through like, what did they mean? How will those interactions be? And as I did this, the other thing too that it really helped me is clarify the language and the dialogue that I'm writing to. When I'm clarifying the wants and needs and the feelings of these people, it really helped me. And I just went and totally refined. There was a whole event in the book that was real, that was like a real life event for me. And I went and changed it because I was like, this just doesn't give me, even though it's true to my life, it doesn't give the purpose that I want for Walker, the character, for Gabe, the older brother, and for Judy to depict these things of their wants and needs and the things that they lack and the defiance that they feel. And how you can see the difference between Judy and Walker, where Judy, yes, she's defiant. Yes, she's mad at the rich people. Yes, she's mad at the system. Walker is those things too. But again, you can see the difference in them because Judy has hope that something could be different and Walker does not. She's resigned. So it's showing how that resignation can already start to the withering, can already start at such a young age. And as the characters move, you see how Walker continues to resign and Judy does not. And you see that difference and you see that she could be that. And I think that's really strong. One of my other things was I had another character because there is a plot line that I want to happen in book 2. And so diving into these characters, and one of the things that really made me want to do it is I had this character named Lane. And he comes into the story mostly because I need him for book 2. And I wanted to dive into these characters because I hated the idea that in book 1 he felt purposeless. And so diving into what his purpose is and what his symbols are and his themes are and his traits are and what he represents is really powerful. And what I realize is in this story, in book 1, it represents what Judy thinks she wants. And he's kind of like this freedom. He feels like he has like this freedom and wealth and kind of the world just like available to him because he does live on the other side of the line. He is an uptowner, but he's also just like this cool kind of like relaxed kid. And Judy's like, oh, well, that's it, right? Like that's the answer, to be an uptowner, to have wealth, but be able to make all your own decisions. And she sees that this is an example of where that wealth and being an uptowner isn't really that, because his family life still sucks like hers does. His family life is actually very probably similar to hers, more so than a lot of other people. aside of like Walker. And so it's really powerful for her to see that. Then I feel like the characters that I had done the most of this with without even really realizing it were the mentor characters for Judy, which are named Gloria and Julia. And I think they're the only characters in the real life that have real names who are real people. Gloria and Julia meant a lot to me, and I've shared this before, and I get so emotional every time I even think about it. They are the reason why I was able to leave and go to college. There came a point where my mom, for many reasons, could not uphold like paying for school. Even though I got tons of grants and tons of loans and tons of like free money to go to school, it was still expect more money than we had. And my mom had like been unable to pay that. And of course, even though I was going to school and still working 2 jobs, I was also unable to pay that. And they paid my tuition off so that I could return because it was too outstanding for me to return. And that is something that I'll forever be thankful for. And so they do a lot for Judy here too. And they are like the mentors for her through the entire story. But even though I knew exactly the role they played in this first book and getting her out and helping her out, I had a hard time figuring out how do they go for book 2 and book 3. And so really being able to look at who they are and what is it that they want, what is it that they need, had helped me really figure out, okay, how do their wants and needs keep going? What is their background? What is their history? And how does that stop them from doing X, Y, Z, which makes sense for these next storylines. So it's really powerful. And then I even did one on the bird, on Arebia's phoenix, because I was like, I don't want her to just like have this bird, but what this bird really represents is the one safe place where Judy gets to be vulnerable, where she has like a companion, because yes, she has her friends, but like Walker doesn't understand. She can't talk about hope with Walker. She can't talk about being poor with Beale. She can't really talk about anything with Lane because she just looks at him like he's too cool. She does not open up to him at all. And so she needs that place. She can't do it with her sister. She can't do it with mom. So she has this bird, and it's the one place where Judy really is able to then mirror like her own growth and strength. And what's so cool is that it's a phoenix. And so one of the things that I'm going to do is, as Judy becomes reborn through the series, so will the bird. And that was something that I kind of got inspiration from and was thinking about with the Throne of Glass series. What I love about the Throne of Glass series and the Selena Aelin character is that she's like reborn multiple times, and every time she learns something new. And a lot of her story too is about receiving love. And so I even asked ChatGPT, I was like, do J.K. Rowling's process for Aelin for me and see what are her traits and all of those things, because I feel like my character, Judy, is kind of like a Harry Potter Aelin like smash in what comes for her. And so I really liked that idea of being reborn and really having something that signified her learning more about herself and becoming a new person. So then what was so cool is doing that gave me some ideas. So then I said, okay, ChatGPT, I have this character, I have the rival character, I have a mirror for this, I have a mom, I have mentors, I have this. I said, are there any characters that I'm missing? And I loved this because it was like, chat was very nice. Chat's very, very nice to me. They're like, oh my God, you did such a great job thinking of all the characters that you need. But it said, you're really missing an actual antagonist. And this is something that I went back and forth on a lot because I want the Withering to be the antagonist. But the truth is, like, when I reflect on myself growing up, poverty wasn't something that I was mad at it. I was frustrated with it, but I always blamed someone. Like, I do think there's a lot of like, systemic stuff. And even now we can still blame certain people who are like in our world as we live, who are like trying to keep the poor and not trying to help them or whatever. And so I did decide, okay, I am going to create a stronger antagonist as a person, which I didn't want to do in the beginning. But as I've been developing in this and looking at the story arc, that's even been something I've found that's difficult to write. At least for me, is the skills of the writer that I am now. And maybe I'll develop that and there's some short story in the future where I figure that out. But I made the antagonist the CEO of the timber company. And what I've and it's been really helpful because, again, I've been able to write this in as the way that Walker speaks. She's like, oh, yeah, Mr. Desmond, thanks a lot for my free and reduced lunch, which sucks. And so it's able to really show characters when they can target their feelings towards somebody specifically. And so really he's basically like, he owns, because timber runs and that's where everybody works, all of the mill-born are born from families who work either the timber mill or the paper mill, which was the timber mill and paper mill were big things. Like my dad worked at the paper mill growing up. He was a welder there. So that's actually pretty accurate to, again, just how it's inspired by my life. But I have kind of like the CEO is the person who supposedly helps fund the life of all of the people who work at the mills, and all of their life sucks. He's the one who underpays everybody. He doesn't give like benefits, and like he funds the school, but only for the rich kids, right? Then it said that I also need a grounded ally. And I was like, oh, I already have that character. Like Judy has a teacher who I think I'm going to call him Mr. Larry, I decided. But he gives very like Lupin vibes, where he's like this very caring, wonderful mentor, but not like her lead mentor, but just like a supportive person. It comes down later that he is actually married to an Etheria, which is what Judy is, her magic power, the bloodline is. So I already had that. Then I decided one of the things that there needed to be another like oppositional character is what chat recommended. And so I decided that I mentioned patrol a lot. Patrol, and now that I have like the timber company, you can see like the patrol is like funded by them. And so I invented like an actual patrol character, which is like a power hungry person. And what I decided to do is make it be the only person who ever was from one side of the line that crossed east to the other side of the line, and how he's just like this power tripping, thinks he's powerful, and now loves to just like come down on other Millborns, even though he is Millborn and now is like become an uptowner. So there's somebody that like all the Millborns spite. He's very like mean, very abusive. He kind of like shows how when you grew up in such a tough environment, sometimes your reaction is to be over tough in return. So there's that. And then this was really interesting that I thought, I didn't think about this at all, but chat was like, you need like an innocent person. You need an innocent in your story. And they were like, you already have a sister, so don't make it be a sister. So I decided that in my book, Judy, in the book, Judy lives in a duplex. So in the duplex next door, I'm going to have there be like a little kid that you see, and just shows like the innocence of growing up. And I realize, as you know, my story is so much about like Judy, where she is as a teenager and where she might be going. She has all these adult characters, but I realize why chat says you need an innocence, because it's showing that this like goes, right? Like this is a cycle, and that there's somebody else who goes through it. So what was really, really powerful about this is I was then able to take every single one of my characters, and I made this chart. And maybe I'll put a screenshot of this up, maybe not, because I just feel like I'm not going to give you all the details, even though I really did. Plus, I'm definitely not going to show you this because it has the names of the books on the top, and I'm not ready to reveal those yet. But down one side, I have every single main character. Like I don't have the innocent in here. I don't, like the girl, like maybe I should add innocent neighbor child. And then in book 1, I say, what is their arc for book 1? What do they do? What is their arc for book 2? What do they do? What is their arc for book 3? What do they do? And this has just helped me as I've been editing already. And I think I'm only on like chapter 3 or 4. I've edited full scenes. I've added in new scenes because I'm like, oh, there are certain things about Judy that she needs to have this happen in order for the rest of this to make sense for who she is. I've been able to refine dialogue so much better. Like this has been so, so powerful. And I think this has been so powerful, like one, yes, because I know my characters better. I'm able to enhance their dialogue, who they are. I'm able to see the story arc over all my series better. I'm able to write their dialogue better. I'm able to add more details and scenes that matter and are very intentional, which I think is really powerful. But the other thing that I really liked about doing this and kind of having this practice is it really makes me think ahead to like when I write book 2 and when I write book 3 and then when I write the prequel and then when I write the side-along one. Like it really helps me see like, oh, how much more full my brainstorming for my book could be now that I did like the brainstorming. I basically just had those big rocks, but it's like this all gets to be part of my brainstorming in the future for my next book, like this practice of what I did with the setting, this practice of what I've done with the characters. And so then my first draft of my next book is just going to be infinitely, infinitely, infinitely better. I am so pumped about this. And I hope that you are too. Like, I really hope, like, I love watching AuthorTube because it helps me with what I want to write. Just like I'm reading now after looking at these types of things, I'm reading books like I just reread The Hunger Games because, of course, you know, Suzanne Collins and her setting and like that transition and the fight against the system, that's all really inspirational to me because that's all part of my story. And so being able to see the nuanced ways where the characters say things against the system, who believes versus the system versus for the system, and how they interact, what is the inner dialogue of Katniss, and it really helps me see that. I'm going to start rereading Harry Potter again, probably today, because I also want to see that, where now that I'm looking at these characters, where is he interacting with these? How is he interacting with these? What is the dialogue? And really reading as a writer has been really helpful, but also watching AuthorTube as not only for my own pure enjoyment and inspiration and motivation, but also picking up on these types of conversations has been really helpful to me. So I really hope that this is helpful to you. If you have made it all the way to this, I would love for you to drop a yellow heart, because yellow is Judy's color. And over the whole arc of this series, she's learning to receive and give love is like one of her internal things, because that's what she wants, is safety, family, security, and connection. And that's how eventually she will build it, just like I did in this real life. I cannot wait to continue editing. I was so afraid of editing before. I thought it was going to be so hard and so big, and I almost like it better than first drafting now, just like this diving in and editing and enhancing. Like, I just feel like everything's getting better and stronger and more powerful. It just makes me so excited to think about people reading this book and feeling like the depth of feeling that I get when I think about certain characters and how those characters change, or when they pass, or when good things happen to them, or when you're like, oh no, don't do that again. Haven't you learned that lesson? Like, I can't wait to create those depths of feelings in my own readers. And I hope that this helped you do the same if you are writing for yourself as well.